It's recording. So thank you so much, everybody, for turning up today. Um, I'm following on from last time, and I think I've made a decision that, if there's any topics, with everybody's permission, I'll do them myself. And I'm making that call because, I suppose I'm in the field and are more intimate and more knowledgeable about the nuanced questions and needed answers for professionals, for students in the counselling field. So that's where I'm coming from for t from today's presentation, which I've called Navigating the Doctoral Landscape. Which means I'm going to actually cover in detail the types of PhDs that are currently available in Australia, why they've developed I suppose why they've developed the types in Australia and what's the goals of each. And then I'm going to follow that with looking at what is the typical PhD student at all age cohorts, the benefits and the disadvantages to each of them. With that said, is there anything in particular anybody wants me to cover before I go ahead, or is everybody happy with those sorts of agendas? Brilliant. All right. And I will say that if I've got my camera off for now, if you've got any questions, I'll ask you to write them down, and then we'll cover them all at the end. Everybody okay with that? Excellent. All right, so let's get started. And before we go, just want to acknowledge the lands that we're meeting on today. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands in which we are meeting from today. And I'm going to pay my respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us. As we gather online, we recognise the enduring connection the First Nations people have to country, wherever they may be. All right. So let's cover the first topic, which is the types of PhDs. So historically, the Doctor of Philosophy, which is the PhD, as I've got on the slide there, was viewed primarily as the training ground for a future, generally in academia. It was a direct pathway to the professoriate, if that was your goal. So very much people who did PhDs had the goal of becoming an academic, being a lecturer at a university, and doing the role of teaching and research. However, this has evolved in response to a changing academic job market and a growing recognition that high-level research is actually critical for addressing complex national and global challenges in the social, economic, and environmental spheres. So consequently, the singular concept of a PhD has now diversified into a portfolio of doctoral programs, each designed to cultivate distinct skills and serve different career aspirations, larger than just being an academic. So we're going to talk about three primary doctoral pathways that are available in Australia at the moment. The generalist PhD, or what's called the traditional PhD, which is the main route. Then we've got that industry PhD. I gave you an example of the industry PhD in LinkedIn, where it's a collaboration between the university and industry, a partnership. And then we're going to talk about the creative output PhD, not so common in our field, but I'll certainly talk about that just for your clarity, in case that is something you want to pursue further on down the track. All right, so let's keep going. I'm going to talk about all three, regardless of the type of PhD, all of them are at what's called an AQF level 10. So they are all defined in the Australian qualifications framework as level 10, which is the highest academic award that you can receive in Australia. So then none is better than the other. They are all designed to satisfy the AQF framework at level 10. All right. So I'm just reading my notes here. So they're all, as I said, they're all rigorously benchmarked at the level 10 qualification, which is the highest recognised qual in Australia. And therefore, the choice between them is not a judgment of quality or intellectual rigour, but rather a strategic decision based on your individual motivations, your research style, and your professional goals. Okay. The official purpose of any of the AQF 10 doctoral degrees is generally to qualify individuals who apply a substantial body of knowledge to research, to investigate and develop new knowledge in one or more fields of investigation, scholarship, or professional practice. All right, so it's very much a research, applies research rigor and credibility and skill for the development of new knowledge. The core requirement is the creation of substantial original contribution to knowledge, placing the graduate at the frontier of a field of work of learning. This high standard serves as the common denominator, ensuring that whether the output is a traditional thesis, an industry-focused project, or a creative work, it represents a genuine advancement of knowledge. So what do we mean by knowledge? In terms of knowledge, graduates must possess a systematic and critical understanding of a complex field of learning. This includes not only deep subject matter expertise, but also substantial knowledge of research principles and methods applicable to the field. Now, I'm not talking about these being inherent requirements. You need these at the beginning. Rather, these are the knowledge that you'll attain upon graduation. What sort of skills will you have? The framework demands that at the end, when you've graduated, you will be an expert. You will have expert and specialized cognitive and technical skills that'll enable the graduate to independently analyze critically, reflect on and synthesize complex information, problems, concepts, and theories. Research and apply established theories to a body of knowledge or practice, and crucially, to interpret and transmit knowledge, skills, and ideas to specialist and non-specialist audiences. So again, I'll just reiterate, this is the end goal upon graduation from an AQF 10, not the beginning. Graduates also can apply their knowledge and skills. So graduates are expected to show initiative and creativity in new situations, and take full responsibility and accountability for personal outputs, and possess the capacity to plan and execute original research that generates new knowledge. So I'm just reading that, so just to let you know that all three of those HDR level programs have to satisfy that the knowledge, skills, and application of a graduate. So they're equal. They're AQF 10 and they're equal in their rigor. All right. I'm gonna pay attention now just to the generalist PhD. Talk about its philosophy and structure. So its primary objective in the generalist PhD is to enable a candidate to make an original contribution to knowledge in the chosen field and to join the worldwide community of scholars. The core philosophy is the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, driven by intellectual curiosity and a passion for a specific area of learning. The structure of a generalist PhD in Australia typically involves an independent supervised research project undertaken over 3 to 4 years of full-time study. It's like a research apprenticeship model where a student works in very close collaboration with an academic supervisor or team of academic supervisors, during that time, learning the craft of research through direct mentorship. Key milestones structure the journey, including the initial literature review at the beginning, then a formal confirmation of candidature, which generally happens 1 year in the program when you're full-time, or 2 years when you're part-time. And then after you've confirmed your candidature, you pass that and you've confirmed it, then the rest of the time is the main phase of data collection and analysis, and then final submission of your thesis. So it is a lonely journey. It's ongoing. It's like doing a full-time job. You don't do it by semesters. It's rather you're enrolled and then you just stay enrolled for the 3 to 4 years, pursuing your research alongside with your supervisor or team of supervisors. So the primary output at the end of that 3 or 4 years is the basis for assessment in generalist PhD. And it is a substantially written monograph, typically ranging from 70 to 100,000 words, which are generally organised as chapters or via individual publications, similar to what Nathan Beale was talking to us about earlier in the year. So he was talking about the generalist PhD, but writing the monograph up as a series of publications, as an alternative as to writing it in chapters in one big monograph that has not yet been published. Okay. The examination process in Australia is distinctive. The thesis is sent out to a minimum of 2 external examiners of international standing for independent review, generally chosen by you, the candidate, because you've become very, very aware of who are the leaders in research and writing in the field that you're doing your PhD in. The relationship between the candidate and their academic supervisor, or the panel of supervisors, is the central pedagogic dynamic of the generalist PhD. In other words, it's not teacher-student, tutor-student. It's not at timetabled times. It's rather a relationship that is evolved between you and your supervisor. The supervisor's role is to challenge, to guide and support the candidate in the journey towards becoming an independent researcher. So it's very different from any other sort of program that you would have engaged in at a university, because it's one-on-one and very much like a mentorship rather than student-teacher relationship. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to now talk about the industry PhD, and just take note, I suppose, of the differences between what I'm about to say and that of the generalist. So an industry PhD is, again, a doctoral program, but this one's designed with an industry application in mind. So the graduate may not enter academia, but instead become a leader in the industry within which their PhD is applied. It serves as a bridge between the worlds of academic research and industry, and it creates a flexible pipeline of researchers who can transition between academia and industry to solve those real-world problems. It is not an ad hoc arrangement, but is largely structured through a formal, government-backed national industry PhD program, a systemic top-down initiative to foster and fund university-industry collaboration on a large scale. It's delivered by specialised entities like Campus Plus, and is supported by organisations such as Science and Technology Australia, otherwise known as STA, which is the program involved. The program involves a substantial government investment of $296 million over 10 years, with the ambitious goal of training 1,800 industry-focused PhD candidates. The whole idea is they train leaders who can apply research, credible and robust research initiatives and programs within industry for the development of that industry. All right. Moving on, the industry-linked PhD is designed for outstanding PhD candidates who are primarily based at a university, but they undertake the research progress project that's been co-designed with the industry partner. The candidate is embedded in the industry setting, so they're generally employees somewhere else, but they are also students at the university for a significant portion of the candidature, and they gain direct practical experience by working on site with the partner organisation. The industry researcher PhD targets highly capable professionals already working in industry who are supported by their employers to undertake the PhD. The candidate remains an employee of the business, retaining their salary and the benefits whilst conducting their doctoral research in partnership with the university. A defining feature of this industry PhD is its departure from the traditional supervisory dyad. The model mandates that there's a joint academic and industry supervision model that's creating a tripartite relationship between the candidate, the university supervisor, and the industry co-supervisor. The structure fundamentally alters the dynamics of a PhD journey. So the academic supervisor is typically focused on ensuring the project's originality, theoretical rigour, and contribution to scholarly knowledge with an eye towards peer-reviewed publication. But the industry supervisor, conversely, is concerned more with the practical outcomes, the commercial applicability, the project timelines, budgets, and the management of intellectual property. The candidate must learn to balance producing practical results for the company versus producing novel academic research. Success in this environment requires the development of a sophisticated skill set that extends beyond pure research to include project management, stakeholder communications, negotiation, and translation of knowledge between academic and commercial contexts, skills that are central to the model's design. All right. So the candidates receive a base scholarship, such as in government's research training program stipend, which is supplemented by a mandatory top-up from the industry partner, which is a minimum of 10,000 a year, and an additional top-up from the government. And this creates a significantly higher overall stipend compared to a traditional PhD, making it a financially attractive option. The candidate continues to receive their full salary and employment benefits from the company, and to facilitate this, the employer receives a substantial government subsidy, about 45,000 per annum, to offset the cost of the employee's salary while they're engaged in PhD studies. The benefits for students include enhanced and diversified career pathways, direct hands-on experience in an industry setting, and the development of a professional network, and a more generous funding package. The benefits for industry include partners gain access to highly skilled researchers who can world-class university facilities and a cost-effective mechanism for conducting research and development initiatives. It also serves as a powerful talent pipeline, allowing companies to co-develop and directly recruit future innovators. The benefit for universities include that the program fosters stronger and more sustainable industry linkages, facilitates research with clear and demonstrable impact, and opens a new stream of research funding. So let's now talk about the third type of PhD, which is the creative output. This is generally designed for candidates who are in fields where new knowledge is generated through creative practices. There's two approaches. There's one called the practice-based research, and this is where research is the primary contribution to knowledge and is substantially embodied in the creative artifact itself. The creative work which may be a painting, a performance, or a design, is the primary answer to the research question. The inquiry is conducted through practice. The other type is practice-led research. In this model, the research leads primarily to new understandings about practice. The creative work is a central and indispensable part of the research methodology, but the principal outcome is new knowledge about the practice, its processes, or its context. It may be termed differently at different institutions, such as thesis by creative work or non-traditional research outputs, otherwise known as nitros. That's the term that's used at the university that I work at, which is UniSC. Okay, so essentially, to summarize that, practice-based research where the output is an actual creative piece, that's the output, and practice-led research where the output is new knowledge about the practice of doing creative work. But let's go on and learn a bit more about this. The defining feature of the doctoral model is its dual component submission, which was alluded to in our last meeting. The final examination is based on a contribution of a substantial creative work, like I said, like a novel, a film, a musical composition, or an art exhibition. And it's accompanied also with a written critical component known as the exegesis, I think how it's pronounced. The weighting between these two elements can vary by institution and project, but it is common for the creative work to represent a significant portion of the overall submission, often around 50 to 70%. The two components are not independent projects, but they exist in a deeply symbiotic and mutually constitutive relationship. One cannot be fully understood or assessed without the other. Examiners must evaluate the integrated submission as a whole, and this often involves a unique examination event where examiners attend the exhibition, the performance, or the screening of the creative work, in addition to reading the written exegesis. All right. The exegesis is a rigorous academic document that situates the creative work within its broader field. It's not merely a descriptive report, but it's a deep critical analysis. All right, so fields, as it says there, can include visual arts like painting, sculpture, photography, printmaking or media. The performing arts, which might be encompassing theatre, drama, contemporary dance, performance art, or music composition. Creative writing, such as a novel, short fiction, poetry, life writing, or creative non-fiction. And then design and media, including digital media, interactive design, architecture, screen and sound studies, and communication. Graduates of creative output PhDs often pursue hybrid careers that blend academic roles with continued professional practice, and they are well positioned to become lecturers and researchers in the creative arts faculties at universities, but while also working as exhibited artists, published authors, artistic directors, curators, or high-level creative practitioners, whose work is distinguished by its depth of research and critical underpinning. I'm going to stop there and ask if there's any questions at all regarding the three types of HDR programs that I've just defined for you, and hopefully I've made them a bit clearer in your heads. No? Oh, good. All right. Well, that gives me a bit of time to move on. to talk about the age-based analysis. Now, this one's going to talk about all three of those doctoral programs, but I'll just talk about PhD because that's the general language. So I'll just talk about the cohorts of the age range, the cohorts of ages to a PhD, but I do mean all three. So the pursuit of a PhD is one of the most demanding and transformative endeavours in modern professional life. It is a journey that requires immense intellectual commitment, personal resilience, and strategic navigation. And I'm going to say here personally, I will put all three of those requirements or commitments, I suppose, equally. The having immense intelligence is no more or less important than having personal resilience, which is no more or less important than having that project management skill or that strategic navigation. They're all important. So, and I say that because there is this misnomer, I suppose, that you're like Einstein to do a PhD. But Einstein, without that resilience or ability, strategic navigation, wouldn't have gotten there. They're all important. So the decision to embark on a PhD is not merely an academic or professional choice. It is a life stage decision, and its consequences ripple through every facet of the candidate's existence. And I'll admit, from financial stability and social integration to career prospects and personal fulfillment. All right. So the median age for all new doctorates recipients hovers around the 31.5 to 32.2 years. So that's median. All right. So that's a United States number. Australia does not publish similar statistics, but I would imagine the median age would be probably very similar to our American counterpart. The graduate student population often exhibits a bimodal distribution. There's a large peak of students around the ages 22 to 24. And then there's a second smaller peak of students around 40 to 49. So put them all together and then the median is 32. So really it's bimodal. You're around the, let's say about the 23 age group and then around the 45 age group. This pattern very much strongly suggests that there's an existence of two primary pathways into doctoral study. The direct pathway, which are those that are continuing their education immediately after doing their bachelor or master's degree. So they don't leave the university system and get a job, they just keep going. They would be the ones who are 23. Yeah. And then the next one are the career returner pathway for established professionals. In other words, those that have finished their undergraduate degree, gone out and got a job and some years of experience and have decided to continue their studies in the PhD space. So that's generally the two cohorts that decide to do a PhD. I'm going to talk about the direct pathway one now, the one where the average age is around 23. These candidates transition into the doctoral program immediately following their undergraduate or their master's degree, and they represent the traditional image of a PhD student. Typically, they're in their mid-20s. So what are the advantages to doing your PhD in the direct pathway? Having spent their entire lives in the academic environment, they are already in the student mindset. This cohort typically possesses a level of youthful energy and optimism that can be a powerful propellant through the grueling early years of a PhD program. They've also got fewer external commitments, such as mortgages or childcare, and they can dedicate vast blocks of time and mental energy to their research, which is a luxury that many older peers don't have. These candidates give themselves the maximum possible time to build a robust research pipeline, to accumulate the publications necessary to be competitive on the job market, and establish themselves as respected authorities in their field. All right. There are disadvantages to the direct pathway as well. The doctoral journey requires 4 to 8 years of living on a minimum stipend, which, while offering covering tuition, provides for a very Spartan existence. This period of low income coincides with what would otherwise be their prime early career years for earning, saving, and investing. Upon graduating, they are comparatively earning significantly less than their peers with a master's or professional degree, and they are termed the PhD poverty. The financial payoff for a PhD, if it materializes at all, is significantly delayed, and statistics show that they actually don't catch up to their peers until they hit their 50s. So they're very much in a PhD poverty. There is a big financial payoff for those people from the direct pathway. Casual conversations with their peers in the department lounge about mortgages, children, and careers can leave this younger student feeling like an outsider with very little common ground beyond the academic work. This can lead to a profound sense of isolation, which is a common complaint among all graduate students, but one that is often amplified for the youngest members of the community. For those who move directly from their undergraduate students' studies, the transition from being a pupil to a colleague is abrupt and disorienting. They feel intellectually underqualified and have an overpowering sense of imposter syndrome. They're naive regarding professional life and workplace dynamics, and their research questions may be less grounded in practical problems. They enter the workforce with less developed professional networks, and potential employers may not actually see their academic training as relevant. Consequently, they are at risk, unfortunately, for mental health problems. All right, thus the decision to undergo HDR in 20s is very high risk, high reward gamble on a very narrow academic future. If upon graduation they decide academia is not for them, they then try to enter the workforce being highly qualified but inexperienced with much debt and minimal savings. If during the journey they do not realise this and don't plan for a plan B by developing transferable skills, they are at a probably lifelong significant disadvantage to their peers. All right. I'm going to talk now about our second cohort called the career-informed cohort, those that are in their 30s. This is the path of returning to academia in one's 30s after establishing a professional career in an this is an increasingly common cohort of PhD people. Having spent years in the workforce, they often possess a much clearer and more focused motivation for pursuing a doctorate. They are making a conscious choice to return to academia, driven by a deep-seated intellectual passion or a specific career objective that a PhD will unlock. Their time in the professional world has equipped them with a suite of skills that are invaluable for navigating the PhD process. They have stronger project management, time management, and interpersonal skills. They are often better prepared to handle constructive criticism, greater emotional maturity, they have confidence, they have resilience, and they're less susceptible to the paralyzing effects of imposter syndrome. The immense challenge, the challenges that they face, though, include the balancing of their PhD with pre-existing and non-negotiable life commitments, such as their partners, young children, mortgages, and aging parents who do require their time and attention. The PhD is not an all-consuming singular focus, but must be very carefully integrated into a complex and demanding personal life. This reality leads to the critical constraint of time scarcity. The PhD journey, therefore, becomes a family affair. A supportive partner and a robust support system are not just helpful, they are absolutely essential for success. The financial sacrifice required of this cohort is arguably the most acute. They are typically leaving established careers at or near their peak earning years to return to the meagre income of a graduate student stipend. This can be both psychologically and practically challenging. However, the return also comes with distinct advantages. Being older and having real-world experiences lends a significant degree of credibility in the classroom. The professional network they built before returning to academia can be a powerful asset, including access to research sites, study populations, and industry-specific insights that enrich their dissertation work. And it can open doors to non-academic career opportunities after graduation. So for the candidate in their 30s, the PhD is best understood not as a foundational gamble, but as a strategic pivot from one professional trajectory to another. They move from practitioner to academic or toward a leadership position. I'm now going to move on to the third age cohort, known as the returner or the on-call. Those are in their 40s plus. This cohort, which is composed of seasoned returners or on-call candidates, which approach their doctoral study not at the beginning of a career, but often as a capstone to one, or as the deliberate launch of a new post-corporate life chapter. Their journey is defined by the unique asset of deep life experience and the formidable challenge of institutional ageism. The most profound advantage for a candidate in this age group is the wealth of professional and life experience they bring to their research. They identify research problems of genuine practical relevance and approach them with a level of sophistication that younger students typically cannot match. They bridge the gap between theory and practice. They are valued by universities since they represent a lower risk for non-completion and bring a valuable, mature perspective to the program. They have high developed soft skills, such as their Masters of Organisation, their Masters of Project Management. They navigate complex social and political environments. They're much more emotionally stable, they're much more resilient, and they have established professional networks. The motivations for this group are often deeply intrinsic. Academia is often an encore career. They do it for intellectual fulfillment, lifelong ambition, chance to immerse themselves in an area they are passionate about, and an opportunity to contribute to knowledge creation. They have a desire to conquer the imposter syndrome and formalize their expertise. They do come with their challenges, though. It is a common experience for students in this cohort to be older than their peers, their supervisors, and even the members of the dissertation committee. This can foster a positive peer-like relationship built on mutual respect and candor. However, if it's not managed, it can lead to awkwardness or even resentment, particularly if a younger professor feels their authority is being challenged. Older candidates may be viewed by the institution with suspicion by committees who question their energy levels, their adaptability to new technologies, or their fundamental understanding of modern research paradigms. On the job market, Hiring committees and industry employers may harbour biases, worrying that older candidates may be too expensive, less trainable, resistant to taking direction from younger managers, or simply too close to retirement to represent a sound long-term investment. It is crucial for the older candidates to have a realistic understanding of their post-PhD career prospects. It's more realistic and attainable academic roles include positions as adjuncts, lecturers, or teaching-focused faculty, particularly at community colleges or universities that place a high value on professional and practical experience. Personal enrichment, intellectual stimulation, and the joy of lifelong learning is more the motivation for academia rather than promotion. For this cohort, the PhD functions less as a foundation and more as a capstone to a professional life or a legacy project. The return on investment is measured not in future earnings or career advancement, but rather in personal satisfaction, intellectual contribution, and the successful translation of a lifetime of practical wisdom into durable scholarly knowledge. Apologies there, I think I skipped a couple of slides there. All right. Sorry. All right. So just so basically what we found is financial stress is a near universal constant in doctoral education, but its nature evolves across the lifespan. So for candidates in their 20s, the challenge is one of survival. The primary struggle is managing life on a meagre stipend, often while servicing undergraduate debt. The anxiety is immediate and tangible, making rent, affording groceries, and the fear of financial emergency with no safety net. For candidates in their 30s, the challenge shifts to opportunity cost. They are acutely aware of the peak professional salaries they are foregoing. The financial pressure is less about day-to-day survival and more about the strategic strain of recalibrating a family budget downwards and the long-term impact on savings and investments. And for candidates in their 40s and beyond, the challenge is becoming one of risk to retirement. The financial investment involves dipping into accumulated savings or relying on a fixed pension income with a much shorter time horizon to recover financially from the years of lost or reduced earnings. The psychological demands of a PhD are immense, and feelings of inadequacy and stress are common to all. However, the triggers for these feelings are, again, age dependent. For the 20s cohort, it is often triggered by a perceived lack of experience and a feeling of being a fraudulent child in an adult world of experts. But in those in their 30s and 40s, it can be activated by the act of returning to a student role after years of being a professional or by switching disciplines. They feel that they should know more because they are older, leading to a unique form of academic insecurity. This differentiation suggests that university mental health supports must be tailored. Younger students may require more assistance with developing foundational coping skills and building social support networks and managing financial anxiety, whereas the older student may benefit more from the resources focused on family counselling, high-level time management strategies, and support for managing caregiver stress. The PhD is never pursued in a vacuum. Its impact on personal and family life is profound through the dynamic change, though the dynamics do change again with age. For candidates in their 20s, the challenge is often about starting a life. The low pay, high stress, and geographic immobility of a PhD program can significantly delay or strain the formation of a long-term romantic partnership and make the prospect of starting a family seem financially impossible. For candidates in their 30s and 40s, the challenge is about maintaining a life. The PhD becomes a major stressor on established partnerships and family structures. It demands an extraordinary level of support, communication, and deliberate boundary settings to prevent the program's demands from overwhelming the family life and personal relationships. So, a thoughtful self assessment is the most critical prerequisite for a successful PhD journey. Prospective students should engage in rigorous self-reflection using questions tailored to their specific life stage. So for candidates in their 20s, have you thoroughly researched the academic job placement rates for your specific subfield from your target universities over the past 5 years? What is your concrete plan B career? And what steps will you take during your PhD to prepare for it if a academic job does not materialize? Have you created a detailed budget based on the offered stipend and the cost of living in the university's location? And do you have a plan for managing existing undergraduate debt and avoiding further consumer debt? And what is your strategy for building a social support network outside of your department? How will you proactively manage the risks of isolation and imposter syndrome? For candidates in their 30s, have you had explicit, detailed conversations with your partner and family about the time, financial, and emotional commitment required? Have you established a clear and mutually agreeable plan for sharing domestic labour, childcare, and financial responsibilities? And have you calculated the full opportunity cost of leaving your career? Have you created a multi-year family budget that accounts for the drastic reduction in income? Can you articulate precisely how the PhD will enable your desired career pivot? And is the PhD the most efficient or effective means to achieve this goal? Or would alternative professional development or work experience be a better investment of time and resources? And for candidates in their 40s and beyond, what is your primary definition of a successful outcome for this PhD? Is it a specific job? Is it personal fulfillment? Is it intellectual contribution? Or is it a legacy project? Are you fully prepared for the possibility that the primary rewards will be intrinsic, not extrinsic or financial? Have you researched the realities of ageism in the academic and non-academic job markets for your field? And do you have a realistic plan for post-PhD employment that accounts for these biases? How will you strategically leverage your decades of professional experience in your research and professional networking? How will you articulate this value to an admissions committee and a potential supervisor? All right. So ultimately, the analysis reveals that there is no single right time to pursue a PhD. The value of the PhD is therefore deeply personal and contextual. It is measured in the currency of passion, purpose, and circumstance. The key to a successful and meaningful experience at any age is to enter the marathon with open eyes, a clear understanding of the unique terrain ahead, a support system equipped for the chosen path. And when undertaken with such clarity and preparation, the pursuit of a doctorate can be one of life's most rewarding journeys. So I want to thank you for listening to that monologue. I really appreciate that. And I'm now going to end the slideshow and open us up, to any questions or clarifications or anything that you'd like to ask from that presentation. But thank you again. Thank you, Elise. Yeah. And I hope it made a lot of sense. It's certainly my experience, my personal experience. I can very much attest to that in regards to me. I was a student who was doing a master's of psychology with the goal of increasing my skill set so that I can be a leader in my field. But I was encouraged by my lectures to transfer over to the PhD, which I thought, yeah, okay, that's a compliment. I'll do that. Um, but I didn't do that reflective homework, and didn't think about the impacts of doing a research PhD when also starting a small family. So there was a lot of boundary setting, and there was a lot of sacrifice financially for me, and also because it pushed out my PhD for a much longer period. Took me 13 years, after which I used it to launch into a new career pathway, which was academia. And I had to start as an ECR, which is called an early career researcher, in my 40s. And my peer ECRs were in their 20s, you know. So I'm certainly I've been in the experience where my bosses are younger than me because they started the career much earlier than me, but I'm okay with it, you know. So, and I very much recognize their role, then their age, you know, and certainly I have a lot of maturity in regards to that space. So I've since been in academia now for nearly 15 years, and have gone up the ranks. Yeah, but I suppose I'm a program coordinator now and a senior lecturer, and my peers are in their 40s, where I'm in my 50s. But I'm okay with it, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. You know, I value the clinical experience that I did have before I started doing a PhD, master's and PhD, and I went in there knowing the gaps in my knowledge because of only having an undergraduate, knowing I had to do postgraduate. So it was very much me not being in the direct pathway, but going in there after having some experience. Yeah, so that was me. And I don't regret it whatsoever. I do love my having gone in the academic pathway. Elise, you've got a question for me. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much for that too. That was really informative. I took a lot out of it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to ask, when I heard you say you did 13 years, and I
Yes.
also heard you say it averages about 3 to 4 years full time.
Yes,
Can I just
absolutely.
clarify, is there a cap on how long it can take?
Good call. So, like a job, if you want to take some leave, which I did, you just apply for leave for any period of time that you need. So, when I was having babies, I had to apply for up to a year of maternity leave. So, that stretched out. That's how I got to 13 years. And you can apply for extensions. Absolutely. If the university can see the project, you have capacity to finish. There is likelihood you'll finish. You'll be surprised how amenable a university will be to your applications for extension. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's comforting. That's comforting. And
Mm.
the other thing is, I heard you say you shared something on LinkedIn, and I just had a quick look on LinkedIn and couldn't find you. Can I get a link or something specific to follow you there?
Yeah, very
Thank
good
you.
question. That's all right. I'm just going to go over to LinkedIn now and put um, the link in the chat for you. Yeah, and
Thank
love you to
you.
join. Yeah, thank you. All right. So it's called the Counseling Research Community of Practice LinkedIn page. And, and whoops. Oh, I'll just stop sharing here too. Sorry. Um, uh, I think that's this one. Yeah, Control C. Hopefully I've got the right one. Control V. There. So click on that and you should come to the Counselling Research Community of Practice in brackets Australia page. Please follow that. And then, yeah, and I keep everybody updated in that space. Beautiful. I'll also let you know in counselling, although the challenges to pursuing a PhD in the older cohorts, 40s. One of them, they said, oh, you're older than the supervisors, you experience ageism. I find that that's less in counselling because most PhD candidates are older. Are older from years of being a practitioner and developing their knowledge and understanding of counselling, and now wanting to create a legacy project. It is common that they're older, and consequently, it's not uncommon for them to be quite successful in obtaining academic roles within faculty, because they're rare. That's a rare animal. The When I say a rare animal, that like a unicorn, faculty in counselling that are pure counsellors. That is, they've got undergraduate and masters in counselling and now doing a PhD in counselling. That's actually quite rare. Most of the faculty right now generally are from psychology who've chosen to go to counselling. But very much the field wants to start creating their own PhDs, But because counselling is so new and there's not a direct PhD pathway, yeah, it's fine. We're finding it very difficult to find pure counselling PhDs. So for that reason, I suppose we're talking about doing PhDs in a baby field, in an emerging field. So it won't be uncommon for the PhD candidates to be older, because that's just the nature of the field. So yeah, that's probably not a disadvantage for counselling and similar fields. Yeah, because we're a young profession. Yeah.
I'm curious, Katrina, you put the creative output pathway in there, which I thought was really interesting in the counseling space. Have you got thoughts around what that could look like?
I put that in there just so that you're understanding of the three types of PhDs in Australia. I didn't want to exclude it because, you may be interested in it. I've never seen a counsellor do their PhD using the creative output, but that I think that would be very interesting. I think that'd be new if you did that. If you went that route, you'd be probably the only one in Australia, which I think's amazing. And I reckon the creative output wouldn't it be beautiful? It was actually a framework, so, something that is creative, something that you have to demonstrate, like poetry or an exhibition. But this happens to be a intervention framework with the exegesis. So if a candidate is interested in that pathway and can argue that pathway, that's a possible pathway. And if that's what you're thinking, I applaud you and encourage you. Absolutely. Yeah. But
Hmm.
it's something where you would have to make sure one of your supervisors is experienced in that field so that they can mentor you in that style of PhD. So I would suggest you would have a panel of supervisors, one of the supervisors being the content expert, the other supervisor being that style of PhD expert. And that would be a beautiful marriage to achieve that. Yeah.
It's interesting because
Mm.
autoethnography jumped straight to my mind as a format.
Ah,
Yeah. I thought that is a very creative format where you
it
could
is.
demonstrate and explore. But yeah, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, beautiful. Or even, yeah, Um, I understand autoethnography as a research method, right? Our method, and therefore it'll be applied to do a research article. Um, and wouldn't just doing one article or one piece of experiment, or, be a research experiment using autoethnography would be one of many chapters in a full program. So, like I said, about 70 to 90,000 words. So, yeah, just doing one single study, which is an autoethnography, you'd probably have to increase the scope to be considered a PhD. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Sorry, I was thinking of it in the context of like a fictocritical, um, whatever that would look like in terms of a completed piece. But yeah, no, that does make sense.
Cool. Excellent. Yeah. The closest thing I've come to see it, and I can certainly get this person to talk to us, is an ex-PhD student of mine who's just finished her PhD actually on the benefits of community chorus singing, community singing for the facilitator of those singing groups. So she did it in counselling, and she is a community group facilitator in singing. One of her chapters was sharing her research outputs via podcast. So to me, that's creative output. So yeah, that would be the closest I know to that creative output. Absolutely. And I can share, she shared the research article about that podcast with me. So I'm more than happy to share that with you in the LinkedIn page. And I'm actually more than happy to set that up if you're interested in learning more about that in their next COP meeting. Yeah. Yeah. So, if I can ask you questions, did talking about the advantages and disadvantages of pursuing a PhD per age cohort, did that help answer any questions for you? Is that something you're already aware of?
I think for me, it helped clarify my thoughts. And I think it also helped in understanding the impact throughout the life cycle of a person, you know. And I think what it also does is make you think about why you want to do one more
Very much.
realistically.
Yeah. You're right. If you were 20, the reason to do a PhD is so different than if you're towards the end of your career. Absolutely. And your ability, the skills you bring into the PhD and the support you bring into the PhD are so different. Absolutely. Definitely. And both have merit and both have their disadvantages. You're right. Yeah. 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 But acknowledging the challenges is just as important. Yeah. It's not, it is significant, but rewarding. It sure is rewarding. Yeah. 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 All right. I think we're coming to, I've sort of saturated the space for questions. I was thinking about our next meeting being about, I did have a particular topic that I was thinking might be of interest to you, which eludes me now, which is silly me. I should have written it down. Yeah, I'm more than happy to receive advice from you or some suggestion from you in regards to another topic that may answer some further questions that you may have. Yeah, so even if it is more about that podcast way of podcasts as another way of disseminating research findings, which is new, yeah, and is not yet commonly known, which might be useful to you, yeah, or just talking to Belinda, my PhD candidate, who's just finished now, about her journey. She's more than happy to do that. Yeah, or anything else you're interested in. Yeah, so I'm more than happy to prepare that. Yeah, yeah. Even, what was it? Even, yeah, I've just reminded, even a topic on how do you make an application? What's a good application to apply to a university for a PhD program? What's involved? If that's something you'd be interested in, I'm more than happy to prepare that as well. So, all right, Caroline likes the look of that one. Yeah, yeah, cool. All right, sounds like I've got one vote on that one. So, application process for PhD. Is that a favourite? You'd like that too, have you?
Yeah.
All right, I'll do that. Excellent. All right. Meanwhile, I will share with you that podcast paper anyway in LinkedIn. Yeah, hopefully you're in there. Yeah. I'll certainly, if I can, I think I'll share this recording also in LinkedIn, but I'll also share it with NHPCE to put it on their YouTube channel, just in case anybody's interested in watching this a bit later. Yeah.